हेलो एवरीवन, गुड आफ्टरनून। कैसे हैं आप? थोड़ा वेट करते हैं लोगों के जॉइन करने के लिए। कम ऑन गाइस, एज एंड व्हेन आप जैसे जैसे जॉइन कर रहे हैं, प्लीज हमें एक हाई ड्रॉप कर दीजिए कमेंट सेक्शन में। इट विल बी नाइस टू सी यू देयर। Okay, I can see 23 people have joined. Where are those 23 people, guys? Please hi drop करिए comment section में. It'll be great to see you. Hi Shailesh, hi Nikunj. Thank you so much for joining us today. Okay, hi Suruchi. Thank you for joining us. Okay, wow, I can see a lot of people have joined. Hi Venkat, thank you so much for joining us. Hi everyone, Merry Christmas. I hope you had a great holiday. Welcome to Indiabulls Securities. मैं हूं आंचल पाठक और आज हम एक बार फिर से आपके लिए एक बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग वेबिनार लेकर आए हैं on mutual funds. Can you hear me properly? Please let me know in the comment section. Hi Kausalya. Hi Ram. Hi Anurag. तो दोस्तों, अक्सर ये बोला जाता है कि म्यूचुअल फंड सही है, बट आपको ये कैसे पता चलेगा कि कौन से म्यूचुअल फंड्स आपके लिए सही हैं? इनफैक्ट सीजन्ड इन्वेस्टर्स भी जो होते हैं, उनके लिए भी सही म्यूचुअल फंड्स पिक करना कभी-कभी प्रॉब्लमैटिक हो जाता है, क्योंकि इतने सारे ऑप्शंस हैं मार्केट में, काफ़ी ओवरवेलमिंग हो जाता है सबके लिए। तो 2025 में ये मिस्टेक कैसे अवॉइड करें, आप ओवरवेलम ना हो, कैसे अपने लिए एक सही म्यूचुअल फंड पिक करें, हम ये आज सीखेंगे हमारे वेबिनार में। एंड आपके जो सारे क्वेश्चंस हैं वो सॉल्व करेंगी मिस शैली गैंग, हेड ऑफ प्रोडक्ट टाटा म्यूचुअल फंड्स, मुझे ज्वाइन कर रही हैं वो आज के वेबिनार में। मिस शैली, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस टुडे। थैंक यू फॉर गिविंग अस योर टाइम। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, आई एम श्योर काफी बिजी शेड्यूल होगा, फिर भी आपने हमारे ऑडियंस के लिए टाइम निकाला, सो वंस अगेन थैंक यू फॉर दैट।
My pleasure, totally our pleasure. On behalf of Tata Mutual Fund, thank you, Indiabulls and team, and the viewers.
Well, it's great to have you here. सबसे पहला जो सवाल है मेरी तरफ से आपके लिए, फर्स्टली बिफोर स्टार्टिंग आई वुड लाइक टू टेल माय व्यूअर्स कि अगर आपको इस टॉपिक से रिलेटेड कोई क्वेश्चंस हैं तो प्लीज कमेंट सेक्शन में डाल दीजिए। हमारी जो गेस्ट है आज, शी विल डेफिनेटली टेक देम अप। सो माय फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन फॉर यू इज, क्या लग रहा है 2025 का इकोनॉमिक फोरकास्ट, एंड हाउ डू यू थिंक दैट विल अफेक्ट म्यूचुअल फंड्स इन द कमिंग ईयर?
सो हम इंडेक्स लेवल फोरकास्टिंग एज अ फंड हाउस तो नहीं करते हैं, बट येस हमारे कुछ व्यूज़ हैं। हमारा हाउस व्यू है जो हमारी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स टीम से आता है। सो वन पार्ट ऑफ द हाउस व्यू इज़ दैट लार्ज कैप्स लुक बेटर ऑन अ रिस्क रिवॉर्ड बेसिस। येस, मिड एंड स्मॉल कैप्स की अर्निंग्स ग्रोथ ज़्यादा हो सकती है, बट वहाँ पर एक्सपेक्टेशंस इतनी ज़्यादा हैं कि थोड़ा सा भी अगर कोई न्यूज़ या इवेंट होता है तो या फिर वो मिड एंड स्मॉल कैप्स अगर एग्जीक्यूशन बेसिस पे या कोई मैक्रो रीजन से एग्जीक्यूशन रिस्क वहाँ पे अगर ज़रा सा भी दिखता है तो वहाँ पे प्राइस इम्पैक्ट काफ़ी आ जाएगा। लार्ज कैप्स काफ़ी अच्छे लग रहे हैं फ्रॉम द वैल्यूएशन पर्सपेक्टिव, और वहाँ पे अर्निंग्स ग्रोथ भी रीजनेबली गुड है। तो इसीलिए एक पहलू ये है, दिस इज वन पार्ट ऑफ द हाउस व्यू, दैट वी फील लार्ज कैप्स आर मच बेटर। प्राइस करेक्शन हमने देखा है फॉर वेरियस रीजंस। अभी इट स्टार्टेड विद यूएस में जो इलेक्शन रिजल्ट्स हुए, उसके बाद उससे पहले हमारे एफआईआई आउटफ्लोज हुए अक्टूबर, एंड इट कंटिन्यूड अक्टूबर एंड नवंबर आल्सो, एंड देन देयर वाज सम अर्निंग्स डाउनग्रेड्स डिस्कशन व्हिच वाज देयर। सो उसके चलते प्राइस करेक्शन हुआ है, और उसके पहले अच्छा खासा रनअप हुआ था। बट हमारा एक व्यू है कि इन द शॉर्ट टर्म ये जो टाइम करेक्शन भी हो सकता है, इट कैन कंटिन्यू। अब इस ड्यूरेशन जो है इस टाइम करेक्शन का कि कितने समय तक ये इस एक फेज में एक बैंड में मार्केट्स रहेंगे, दैट डिपेंड्स ऑन चाइना रिकवरी किस तरह से होती है, यूएस पॉलिसीज आफ्टर मिस्टर ट्रम्प टेकिंग ऑफिस ऑन 20 जन क्या रहती हैं, और यूएस फिजिकल पोजीशन को वहाँ कैसे मैनेज किया जाता है. ऑफ कोर्स देयर आर डिस्कशंस ऑफ टैक्स कट्स, बट कॉस्ट कैसे मैनेज की जाती है. Of course, after Mr. Trump's coming in and his announcement, dollar has run up quite a bit. It had touched 108. Dollar index had touched 108. So वहाँ पे काफी कुछ policies plus how it is being managed there, on the fiscal front, all that will also decide the trajectory. China recovery है, हमारे यहाँ पे हमारी जो earnings growth है वो कैसे shape लेती है after government spending happening, liquidity जो crunch बीच में आया था या अभी seasonal liquidity crunch है उसे कैसे manage किया जाता है. तो ये सारी चीज़ों को साथ में रखते हुए विल सी हाउ दी, तो ऐसा पॉसिबल है कि थोड़े टाइम तक ये शॉर्ट टर्म प्राइस करेक्शन, टाइम करेक्शन रहे. हाउएवर जो पहली दो चीज़ें हैं, जो चाइना रिकवरी एंड यूएस पॉलिसीज शेप अप, वो हमारे कंट्रोल में नहीं है. बट व्हाट इज इन आवर कंट्रोल एंड व्हाट वी कैन सी एंड हैव अ व्यू ऑन वेरी विद अ लॉट ऑफ प्रेडिक्टेबिलिटी इज दैट India GDP and earnings growth, they look healthy from FY26 perspective, in the background of Indian government spending and the liquidity situation management. So हमें लगता है कि कुछ सेक्टर्स हैं जो काफी रन अप हो चुके हैं और वहाँ पे, बट वन इम्पॉर्टेंट पार्ट इज कि this is now not the time of not the time for a narrative discussion or a thematic discussion. ये time है bottom up stock portfolio and bottom up stock picking का. So that's very very important. Even in some of the sectors जहाँ पे काफी रन अप हो गया, but कुछ pockets हैं जैसे capital goods है, power है, in some manufacturing है, defense है, यहाँ पे काफी रन अप हो चुका है. But इनमें भी in certain pockets are there on the bottom up stock picking which can deliver. And apart from that, banking and financial services and pharma and healthcare, these are certain sectors which we find very very attractive from valuation and earnings growth perspective.
राइट, मैक्रो लेवल पर एक बात हमने कर ली है, अब एक बहुत ही इंडिविजुअल लेवल पर आते हैं और बात करते हैं. एंड वील टॉक अबाउट, वील गेट इनटू द टॉपिक ऑफ टुडे. What are the few basic indicators जो ध्यान में रखने चाहिए बिफोर पिकिंग अ म्यूचुअल फंड? वेरी बेसिक, बट ये सब चीजें कोई किसी को सिखाता नहीं है. एंड राइट नाउ, एज आई मेंशन, दैट देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ ओवरवेलमिंग चॉइस इन द मार्केट. सो हाउ डू आई डिसाइड एज एन इन्वेस्टर कि क्या ऐसे 3-4 इंडिकेटर्स हैं, उसके बेसिस पर क्या किस हिसाब से हम म्यूचुअल फंड्स पिक कर सकते हैं?
श्योर. तो इंडिकेटर्स हैं, सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट है रोलिंग रिटर्न्स. देखिए, वैसे तो सेबी द रेगुलेटर हैज़ मेड द कैटेगरीज ऑफ एक्टिव म्यूचुअल फंड्स वेरी वेरी होमोजेनस. पहले होता था कि लार्ज कैप्स में भी, लार्ज कैप कैटेगरी में भी आप कुछ फंड हाउसेस देखेंगे तो वो स्मॉल कैप्स एंड मिड कैप्स लेते थे टू परफॉर्म बेटर, टू शो बेटर रिटर्न्स. बट आफ्टर 2018 रिकैटेगराइजेशन, सबसे अच्छी बात जो रेगुलेटर ने की है वो हर एक कैटेगरी को होमोजेनसली डिफाइन कर दिया है. Now within that, so that the base is quite, the foundation is laid very very well. Over and above that, अगर हम देखेंगे तो रोलिंग रिटर्न्स बहुत जरूरी है. जब आप पॉइंट टू पॉइंट रिटर्न्स के साथ में आप 1 ईयर, 3 ईयर, 5 ईयर, 10 ईयर पॉइंट टू पॉइंट रिटर्न्स जरूर देख सकते हैं, बट उसी के साथ में रोलिंग रिटर्न्स देखना जरूरी है. रोलिंग रिटर्न्स ये होता है कि आज एक इन्वेस्टर है, वो एक ही दिन पे इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर रहा है. The probability of investor investing on any of the last 1 year days or any of the days of the time period, उसकी probability equal है. कुछ इन्वेस्टर्स आ जाएंगे, कुछ इन्वेस्टर्स कल आएंगे. तो इसीलिए जो रोलिंग रिटर्न्स हैं वो हर एक दिन के लास्ट 1 ईयर या हर एक दिन का लास्ट 3 ईयर रोलिंग रिटर्न से 3 ईयर रिटर्न या हर एक दिन का लास्ट 5 ईयर रिटर्न. लेट्स से हम एक 3 ईयर रिटर्न की बात करते हैं. तो हर एक दिन पे जो लास्ट 3 ईयर रिटर्न्स हुआ है, टुडे, एज ऑन टुडे लास्ट 3 ईयर रिटर्न्स पॉइंट टू पॉइंट, एज ऑन टुमारो लास्ट 3 ईयर रिटर्न्स, एज ऑन डे आफ्टर लास्ट 3 ईयर रिटर्न्स, ऐसे सारे वैल्यूज आ जाएंगे और उन सारे वैल्यूज का जो एक एवरेज नंबर आएगा, दैट इज द रोलिंग रिटर्न. एंड दैट इज इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज आप हर एक दिन के रिटर्न को उस चीज में, उस कैलकुलेशन में रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं, बिकॉज इन्वेस्टर किसी भी दिन आ सकता है. पॉइंट टू पॉइंट रिटर्न में जब आप लेते हैं तो आप इस एक ये दिन एंड एक ये दिन, इन 2 दिनों के बीच का रिटर्न लेते हैं, व्हिच मीन्स कि अगर इन्वेस्टर इस दिन आया है और इस दिन तक अपना असेसमेंट कर रहा है, तो यही पीरियड का रिटर्न है। बट अगर हम उस बीच के हर दिन का रिटर्न लेके उसका एवरेज कर रहे हैं, तो एक प्रोबेबिलिटी ज़्यादा रियलिस्टिक रिटर्न का एक ज़्यादा रियलिस्टिक रिटर्न नंबर आ जाता है, बिकॉज़ इट्स एन एवरेज ऑफ ऑल दोज़ डेज़। सो इट इज़ वेरी, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू सी रोलिंग रिटर्न्स। रोलिंग रिटर्न्स के साथ-साथ क्लाइंट्स को, इन्वेस्टर्स को शार्प रेशियो देखना चाहिए, विच इज़ रिस्क एडजस्टेड रिटर्न। फंड की वॉलेटिलिटी देखनी चाहिए कि कितना वॉलेटाइल है। स्टैंडर्ड डिविएशन कैलकुलेट होता है, 1 ईयर स्टैंडर्ड डिविएशन, 3 ईयर्स, सो जो फैक्ट शीट्स में डिस्क्लोज होता है वो 3 ईयर स्टैंडर्ड डिविएशन होता है। एंड एक्सपेंस रेशियोज, ऑफ कोर्स एयूएम के हिसाब से एक्सपेंस रेशियोज बढ़ते, मतलब एयूएम जैसे बढ़ता है एक्सपेंस रेशियोज कम होते हैं, बट ज़रूरी है। एंड पीयर सेट में देखना कि किसके एक्सपेंस रेशियोज क्या हैं। वैसे सेबी ने वो भी एक कैप लगाई हुई है, रेगुलेटर ने कैप लगाई हुई है, बट इट्स गुड टू कीप एन आई, दैट्स फॉर एक्टिव फंड्स। फॉर द पैसिव फंड्स ये होमोजेनिटी नहीं है, बहुत तरीके के थीमेटिक, सेक्टर और फैक्टर फंड्स आते जा रहे हैं, एंड इट्स गुड। इन्वेस्टर्स हैव अ लॉट ऑफ चॉइस, इवॉल्व्ड इन्वेस्टर्स कैन चूज अमंग्स द फंड्स, बट वहाँ पे आपको ट्रैकिंग डिफरेंस एंड ट्रैकिंग एरर दोनों देखना चाहिए। ट्रैकिंग डिफरेंस इज नथिंग बट हाउ deviated the portfolio returns are from the index returns, and tracking error is nothing but a standard deviation of all that daily differences जो आते हैं। तो आपका रिटर्न डिफरेंशियल आ गया, आपका वॉलेटिलिटी ऑफ दैट रिटर्न डिफरेंशियल आ जाता है, एंड एक्सपेंस रेशियोज। सो एक्टिव में हमने बात की रोलिंग रिटर्न, स्टैंडर्ड डिविएशन, शार्प रेशियो, रिस्क एडजस्टेड रिटर्न की, और एक्सपेंस रेशियोज की। एंड पैसिव में आप ट्रैकिंग डिफरेंस, ट्रैकिंग एरर एंड एक्सपेंस रेशियोज देख सकते हैं।
राइट, आई होप हमारी ऑडियंस नोट्स ले रही है, क्योंकि हमारे साथ हैं फिलहाल शैली गैंग, जो आपकी सारी जो म्यूचुअल फंड रिलेटेड क्वेश्चंस और क्वेरीज हैं वो सॉल्व करेंगे। एंड लेट मी जस्ट रिमाइंड एवरीवन कि इवन आफ्टर दिस इंटरेक्शन इज डन, इवन आफ्टर योर क्वेश्चंस आर डन, ये वीडियो हमारे यूट्यूब चैनल पर रहेगा, तो यू कैन ऑलवेज कम बैक टू इट। सो आप फिर से इसको सुन सकते हैं। Shaily, you mentioned expense ratios. Now, you said कि जितना बड़ा AMC, जितना बड़ा EUM, उतना ज़्यादा expense ratio, but obviously that is also capped. थोड़ा और डिटेल में अगर हम एक्सपेंस रेशियोज के बारे में बात कर सकते हैं कि हमारी इन्वेस्टमेंट पे कितना इम्पैक्ट करता है ये, और हमें कितना वेटेज देना चाहिए while picking the fund. If you could tell us a little more about that.
सी देखिए, अगर फंड्स, एज आई सेड, एक्सपेंस रेशियोज का कुछ कंट्रोल वो ऑलरेडी होमोजेनाइज डिफाइंड है, तो एयूएम बेसिस पे होता है। एयूएम जैसे जैसे बढ़ता है, नेट एवरेज एक्सपेंस रेशियोज कम हो जाते हैं। हाउएवर, एक्सपेंस रेशियोज इज जस्ट वन पार्ट, हाउ द पोर्टफोलियो इज मैनेज्ड, what is the investment philosophy, what is the portfolio construction method that the active fund manager does. I think all those things are much, much more important than expense ratios. Of course, to some extent, to a little extent, expense ratios could impact, because जितना ज़्यादा है उतना एक्सपेंस रेशियो है, उतना आपका इन्वेस्टमेंट कम होगा, तो कंपाउंडिंग इफेक्ट आएगा ओवर अ पीरियड। बट आई थिंक मच मोर इम्पॉर्टेंट देन दैट इज द ओवरऑल फंड मैनेजर, the overall fund house philosophy, investment philosophy, fund manager track record, and the way he manages the portfolios and does the portfolio construction. I think that is much more important.
सो फंड मैनेजर से रिलेटेड ही मेरा अगला क्वेश्चन है कि कैसे असेस करे किसी फंड मैनेजर को? कोई इंडिकेटर्स हैं जो आप बता सकते हैं, या फिर आर वी जस्ट लुकिंग एट द हिस्टोरिकल परफॉर्मेंस ऑफ द फंड एंड देन डिसाइडिंग? व्हाट आर योर थॉट्स ऑन दैट?
I think some of these questions are very, very relevant, and I'm glad you guys have put together such a good, list set of questions. But before that, the assessment of the fund manager, उससे पहले या उसी से connected है, I wouldn't say उससे पहले, it's very important to identify कि फंड मैनेजर की स्टाइल्स या फंड मैनेजर का पोर्टफोलियो मैनेजमेंट किस किस तरह का हो सकता है। कुछ फंड मैनेजर्स हैं जो बहुत ही लॉन्ग टेल्ड पोर्टफोलियो बनाना और मैनेज करना पसंद करते हैं। फॉर एग्जांपल, दे कुड हैव 100 120, I've seen 150 stocks also in the portfolios. There are some other fund managers who want to manage a very concentrated set of stocks, which is some 20, 25, 30 stocks only. And then there is a mid-pack fund manager who's very comfortable with not having a very long tail, but not having a very concentrated portfolio as well, and having 40 to 60 stocks. अगर बहुत ही ब्रॉड बेस्ड मार्केट है तो वो अपना जो 40 स्टॉक्स का पोर्टफोलियो 60-65 स्टॉक्स तक ले जाएंगे. स्मॉल कैप में हो सकता है थोड़े ज्यादा चले जाएं 70 स्टॉक्स तक. अदरवाइज बिटवीन 40 to 60 दैट्स द रेंज ऑफ द फंड मैनेजर. तो सबसे पहले ये आइडेंटिफाई करना जरूरी है. व्हाई? बिकॉज in a very very broad based market, the 150 stock fund manager tends to do well. In a very narrow market, maybe a 20-30 stock portfolio tends to do well if all the stocks or the holdings which he has taken in his portfolio are the ones which are leading the index or the broader market. And then you have this 40 to 60 stock portfolio, which the way to look at it, which is our kind of investing here, is that so phases हो सकते हैं जैसे मैंने बताया, but ये जो वाला stock है 40 to 60, here usually it tends to happen that जो बहुत ही ब्रॉड मार्केट में कभी कभार अंडर परफॉर्मेंस दिख सकती है, बिकॉज अगर बहुत मतलब ब्रॉड मार्केट है सारे स्टॉक्स ऊपर जा रहे हैं तो फिर 40-60 स्टॉक पोर्टफोलियो वो थोड़ा अंडर परफॉर्म कर सकता है. बट द की टू दैट स्टाइल इज दैट द आउट परफॉर्मेंस, व्हेन द फेज ऑफ आउट परफॉर्मेंस कम्स इन, the outperformance by far is much more than underperformance which would have been seen in any of the other phases. So in a complete cycle, it is important to know that in a complete cycle the fund has outperformed overall. So first is to identify which kind of portfolio management style the fund manager belongs to. Second is to map whether intuitively kaun se phase mein wo acha karna chahiye the aur acha nahi kar rahe. And at the end of the complete cycle, then the ideally the outperformance should be by far much more than the underperformance, and that is why overall point to point your rolling returns अच्छे आएंगे. We have seen rather, there are some funds who converge and diverge from 40-50 stocks to 150 stocks and then they come back. It's not an easy job to do. Lane changing is very very difficult, and you have to do the lane changing at the right time, and along with the timing you have to choose the right set of stocks while you're doing the lane changing. It's a very very difficult thing, so it's important to stick to your philosophy, and in a complete cycle the outperformance should take care or be much more than the underperformance in some of the phases which could come. So that's important.
राइट, डेफिनेटली. और अगर हम इन्वेस्टिंग स्टाइल के बारे में बात करें तो आई एम श्योर ऑडियंस ये भी जानना चाहेगी कि आपका पर्सनल इन्वेस्टिंग स्टाइल कैसा है. हाउ डू यू प्रेफर टू इन्वेस्ट?
So we as a family and I personally, we go by mutual funds, not so much direct stocks, but within mutual funds we are equity oriented. I am as a family, if you see the family pot or my personal pot, it is equity oriented. You could say 80% equity and 20% fixed income. Fixed income will have an emergency bucket. शॉर्ट टर्म गोल्स होते हैं, जो ट्रैवल गोल है या कोई भी शॉर्ट टर्म गोल है, उसके लिए एक शॉर्ट टर्म ड्यूरेशन फंड या शॉर्ट टर्म बॉन्ड फंड ले सकते हैं, जो कि हमारा एक्सपोजर है. एंड वेरी लॉन्ग टर्म डेट भी मिसिंग नहीं है पोर्टफोलियो में से. थ्रू पीपीएफ, थ्रू सुकन्या समृद्धि, वी हैव अ डॉटर हु इज नाउ 11 years old, so we have a Sukanya Samriddhi running. So the long term debt is taken care of within that 20% through these short-term debt we have for emergency and short-term goals. And within the equity portion, as I said, we are equity oriented. We have a good mix of active and passive, and a strategic portfolio, which is a very very long-term linear, evergreen funds taken, and a tactical portfolio also. And within this strategic and tactical, both the buckets, we have active and passive also. We have diversified between active and passive, because active kya karta hai, it will zoom into one pocket, one subsegment. It could and have overweights. There are some fund managers who do a lot of sector overweights, and obviously stock overweights bhi ho jate hain. But there are some fund managers who do a very minimal sector overweight, underweight, but underneath those sectors they do a good amount of stock overweights, which means कि आपका जो portfolio अगर आप compare करेंगे benchmark से तो active share जो है, which is portfolio away from the benchmark, could be quite high. So ऐसा भी हो सकता है. तो इसीलिए we have a good, but passives will probably very large themes, very large sectors. It will have a representation from each of these basic industries or sectors. So we have a good diversification between active and passive under both these buckets of strategic and tactical. And also one important thing on the gold. So gold, we prefer to have a perennial, and we do have a perennial investment in gold because if you think about gold, there are multiple branching out discussions. One is global central banks are buying gold. The demand for gold is increasing. It's not that gold has become a reserve currency as a status, but it definitely is competing with dollar. Of course, cryptocurrency is a very new entrant in the discussion for reserve currency status, but gold and dollar, are there. Global central banks are diversifying their dollar holdings by buying gold. That's one. When you have geopolitical tensions, gold prices run up. Even if you have dollar, you have a rate hike and a dollar also rising. Even in that scenario, we've seen gold has also risen if there are geopolitical tensions. So because of that, and if there is a demand for gold, suddenly there's a huge inflow in gold ETFs. They need to be physically backed by physical gold, and obviously demand for gold increases. So these are the various reasons why gold would do well. Also, one important thing is whenever there is a high inflation scenario and a high interest rate scenario, gold is a great hedge against currency depreciation and inflation both. And high inflation could occur. There are various reasons, supply side, fiscal policies, which could lead to high inflation. So अगर high inflation है, so gold is a great hedge against currency depreciation because gold does not lose its value like other currencies. जब high inflation होता है, high interest rate होता है, तो currencies definitely strong हो जाती है, but वो devalue भी होती है over a period. So gold devalue नहीं होता, वो अपनी value intact रखता है, and that's why we feel, for all these reasons, we feel gold is also very important. So we have gold also in our portfolios.
That's quite a well-rounded portfolio, and I hope once again that people are taking notes. काफी questions आ गए हैं audience की तरफ से. We'll definitely take them up in a bit. हमारी discussion जैसे ही खत्म होती है तुरंत हम आपके questions ले लेंगे. Obviously काफी हमने बातें की हैं macro level पर, personal level पर भी. एक this is a question that I would like to ask everyone, any fund manager or any, product person that I meet. Risk tolerance, एक और एक buzzword है, which we get to hear a lot. But how can I as an individual actually go about assessing and, understanding my risk tolerance? क्या-क्या factors दिमाग में रखने चाहिए while you are deciding your risk tolerance?
I think the first thing which comes to my mind, and which is the way I think that's the way to think about your risk tolerance, is that how much does it impact a person in the moment when that event happens? All of us can sit back and think theoretically that, okay, I'm okay if the portfolio goes down, let's say by 10%, but if that same portfolio is positioned well enough to give me a 20% return, I'm okay if it goes down by 10% at some point in time. But how does it impact you as an investor when that actually happens? You would have seen instances. If that impacts a lot, and your action is that you will exit the game, which is the investing game, then it is much better to go into a investment avenue or a fund which has lower volatility, because that will also have a lower downside. If the upside is also relatively lesser, it is okay, but at least that will not make you exit the game. Because अगर exit कर दिया तो point to point returns है ही नहीं. आपका 10-year, 15-year, 20-year return कहाँ से बनेगा? So the most important thing is, if it impacts you a lot and your action is to exit the game, it is okay to not think about that 20% upside. It's okay to have a 10-12% return portfolio, but for a longer duration, for you to stay in the game for 20 years. That's the most important thing. And how do you act and react in the moment when the event actually happens? So that is something which is important. The second thing could be, what is your knowledge, and how much have you invested and experienced, and how evolved are you as an investor in knowledge. If you think that you are much evolved to understand the nitty gritties of how the market works and how and why a price impact can come, maybe your risk tolerance is higher. Also, if you have a very large portion which is into a close-ended portfolio, or if the portfolio has a large portion of close-ended, then your risk tolerance obviously goes lower, because the liquid money is only that much. So it's very important. Ideally, you should not have more than 15-20% of your portfolio into a close-ended fund structure. The large set of money is 85% should be into open-ended funds. So I think some of these things are very, very important, for one to see. And there are a lot of questions and question sets which are available, which scores your responses and gives you a profile in terms of moderate or conservative or aggressive or very aggressive. And you should take up one of those.
Right. Another question that is definitely on everyone's mind currently is that टेक्नोलॉजी में दिन भर दिन कितने सारे चेंजेस होते जा रहे हैं और वो हर लाइफ के हर एस्पेक्ट पर इम्पैक्ट पड़ रहा है टेक्नोलॉजी का. सो व्हेन इट कम्स टू म्यूचुअल फंड्स, हाउ डू यू थिंक टेक्नोलॉजी इज गोइंग टू इम्पैक्ट देम इन द कमिंग इयर्स?
So, the technology is impacting various, various aspects of the overall mutual fund space.
Right.
One is digital onboarding. So KYC is the most talked about. For example, पहले physical KYC होती थी mutual funds के भी. उसके बाद video KYC की acceptability आ गई. That infrastructure was set. And very off late now, I think a year old is your DigiLocker. Through the DigiLocker or through Aadhaar based KYC, there is a specific file which you need to generate from the website, and then you can upload that format of the file, and the Aadhaar based KYC is done. So that has streamlined a lot and crunched a lot of TAT for account opening, for KYC done. Basically, prep to get some investments started, or prepped before you can start investing. That gives, because अगर शुरू में ही वो hindrance आ जाती है कि वो KYC नहीं हो रही है या वहाँ पे ये अटक गया, so then the probably a lot of dropouts could happen. But अगर that piece is very smooth, so that's one space where we have seen dropouts would be less and it would be more seamless. The other part is, once the investments are done, obviously investors need handholding, investors need guidance. So there are chatbots, there are apps, exchanges, interactions which can be done digitally, and new investors can find answers. Old investors can still ask more evolved and deeper questions and get answers to them. So there is somebody at the other end always available digitally. Of course, the physical piece is there, but digitally also. So I think that's another piece. So you have more confidence once the investments are done to carry out the investments. And then for the AMCs, if they are having, let's say, newer websites or newer platforms, you have open APIs which are there where data can be exchanged, and very quickly one set of data can be picked up by the other platform, and integration of data can happen, and websites and apps can be launched. And the other part is, since everything is being moved to cloud, all databases, it has become much more easier and faster for websites and microsites and everything to become live and get active. So I think a lot of things are happening there. Plus, the convenience angle which has come in post-COVID, and that is very much visible in the amount of mutual fund AUM, the amount of folios, the count of folios, the SIP folios, all those things which have proliferated multiple times over in the last 5 to 6 years. That is proof enough that how the digitization of things, first is the financialization of savings, which means a lot of money is coming from the real estate and gold and land pieces to the financial assets. And while they are coming, the digitization and adoption of digital platforms is helping the money to come onto these financial assets very, very fast. with the convenience. So there are broking, entities who have completely gone digital, and they have a
Right.
lot of repeat buys happening. So I think you have digital impact happening in all areas of the mutual fund and the stock investing space.
एज अ प्रोडक्ट हेड, आपको क्या लगता है एक ऐप में वो दो तीन, कोई म्यूचुअल फंड ऐप हो उसमें वो दो तीन फीचर्स कौन से होते हैं जो हर कस्टमर को पसंद होते हैं या फिर हर कस्टमर को चाहिए? व्हाट आर द मोस्ट बिलव्ड फीचर्स?
I think it should be simple yet very, very comprehensive. If I have put in my investments, my monies in, let's say, 12, 15 funds, I should be knowing very basic things, but in one, it should be a bird's eye view. How much have I invested? What's the capital amount? What is my period wise return? What is the current value? The last 1 year returns and the overall XIRR since inception for each fund, and at a portfolio level. And that should be available for all asset classes that I have invested into, for equities, for debt, for multi-asset funds, for gold ETFs, for fund of funds, everything. So for stocks, if it is so, a single consolidated report, and all the reportings done in a simple manner, which shows me my capital investment, my value, my percentage returns, my XRR returns, because each investment would have been made at different points in time. If I have SIPs, then each month an amount is going up, and you have now very evolved features also, which is like STP, step up SIP, step up STP. You have withdrawal
राइट.
plans. So I think all those things should be included very well in a consolidated report, and that is where the investors will see all their money, into one report, and knowing the current status as is.
राइट, अल्टीमेटली इट इज योर मनी एंड कन्वीनियंस भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज होती है.
Sure.
सो डेफिनेटली सम गुड पॉइंट्स देयर. मैं अपनी ऑडियंस को याद दिला दूं कि हम क्वेश्चंस ले रहे हैं. सो वी आर ओपनिंग द प्लेटफॉर्म फॉर मोर क्वेश्चंस. फिलहाल कुछ क्वेश्चंस हैं which I would like to bring to you, Shaily. First is by Ashish Singh. Does investment in hybrid funds is investment in the upcoming year?
I missed, I think there was some network blip. Anchal, could you repeat the question again? Hybrid funds?
So Ashish is asking, is investing in hybrid funds rather prudent, more prudent as compared to investing in sectoral or thematic funds in the upcoming year?
Okay, so sectoral and thematic funds have their own space, and as I mentioned, two sectors which currently we find a lot of value in, which is banking and financial services because of their valuation attractiveness, and pharma and healthcare because of their reasonable valuations and of course earnings growth as well. So that's there. However, hybrid funds come in to the rescue, and there's a lot of volatility which is there. If there is a lot of volatility in the market, hybrid funds on their own can manage. Because see, when hybrid funds, what do? They keep resetting the allocation between equity and debt. And equity could be net equity, cash equities plus arbitrage equities, and the rest is fixed income. So at a time when the valuations are very attractive, which means a correction has happened, not many people can have the courage to bring in more cash to invest at that point in time. And these funds are able to do that in a very, very professional and a very, very scientific manner. Bring in cash when it's most suited to invest. So that's possible. Also, when all this, resetting is done, rebalancing is done, it is done under the trust format. So, the taxation impact is not there when you are doing buy and sell underneath that fund. The taxation impact to the investor only comes in when the folio action is done, whether it is redeemed towards the end, or so if you redeem the portfolio, let's say after 5 years or 10 years, your tax impact comes in only after 10 years when you have done a folio redemption action. Otherwise, all those ins and outs basis the valuation of the market done by the fund manager does not attract any tax impact. And the professional fund manager brings in additional monies when required into equities, and takes away from equities and invest into debt when the valuations get very, very expensive.
Apologies for that. I think there was some network error, so I think I missed a little bit of that. Should we move on to the next question then? Post that?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So Rajkumar is asking to invest in international funds, we need to select fund of fund. Is it recommended to invest in FOF?
Yes, you could have some bit of investments towards an overseas, fund as well. Some of the domestic funds enable, overseas investments to the tune of 20%. So you could look at some of those funds, or you could invest some bit, 5-7% into an overseas fund for a diversification. But we feel that within India, you have, India's, when you look at growth rates of all economies in all countries, in a slowing world, we feel India has a great, has a higher growth rate relatively, and has a great foundation for that growth rate. And we do trade at a premium to other markets, and that premium lies in the fact that our macros are good, and we have growth rates to support, led by investment cycle recovery and consumption both. So from that perspective, India itself is a great investment destination. However, for some diversification into US tech or something, some bit of overseas is good, can do.
Right. Himanshu wants to speak a little more about SWP. How can it be beneficial for an individual after a good corpus? Somebody who is looking for a good corpus.
So I think what we usually discourage is investing today and starting in SWP just 1 year down the line or 2 year down the line, because finally when you're doing so, the objective of SWP is when you really need cash inflows every month, and that comparison is with a dividend option. That if you were to receive the same amount through dividends vis-a-vis SWP, SWP turns out to be more tax efficient. So, like you said, if there is a great corpus already there, attaching an SWP to that is an efficient way of withdrawal, is what I would say, rather than thinking that, okay, let me invest now and in 1 year's time I'll start the withdrawals, because you're actually also withdrawing a part of the capital, and that's not a great thing to do. So the great thing to do is, during a build phase, accumulation phase, keep accumulating through SIPs, STPs, and once you have reached a stage where it is you need the cash inflows back to your account and back to your own self or your own consumption, you can attach SWP feature to that corpus, to that fund, and start taking some bit of SWP amount depending on your requirement.
Right, those are all the questions we have as of now. But while we wait for more, any parting notes that you would like to give to our audience? Any tips or tricks that you would like to share?
I think the most important thing which we all hear, but I don't know how much do we practice, is that time in the market is the most important thing. More money is lost by staying outside the market. I heard one of the experts say that the larger risk is not staying in the market. The larger, because that's a managed risk by professional portfolio managers. The larger risk is risk of staying out, risk endured by staying out of the market, not participating at all in a country like India, which is which has so much of growth potential. So that's the larger risk. So stay in the market, stay for longer, keep investing, keep adding, keep building, and always think from a 5 year, 10 year, 15 year, 20 year perspective. Until you asked me some of my personal, style of investing. We started doing SIPs since I started working about 20 years ago. And we only reduced our SIPs a little bit when we bought a house for our own living and consumption. Otherwise, we've never stopped our SIPs. They have all continued, and it has seen that whatever cycles have come in the last 20 years, we've seen that. And if you would see a CAGR, you can see the CAGR of the last 20 years of a Nifty 50 or Sensex itself. It would be around 13-14%. 13-14% CAGR is a great number. So, we can all talk about multiple events, but finally, you need to think 10 years and 20 years and 15 years and 20 years timeline for investing.
Right, that's great advice. And for anyone listening, again, this YouTube video will be on YouTube post this discussion. That's questions भी we have completed for this round. And अगर आपके हमारी audience को और भी कोई questions हो, तो please drop them in the comment section, and we will try to pick them up later. We will try to answer them later. But for now, that's all from our side. Ms. Gang, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your time, and also I feel कि ये conversation काफी impactful रही है, rather than just a back and forth about कि mutual funds अच्छे हैं, आपको invest करना चाहिए. यहाँ पे actually viewers को कुछ knowledge मिल सकती है. So thank you for that, and we'll definitely catch up with you soon, and have a great new year.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on your platform, and happy new year and happy investing to all your viewers. Thank you, team Indiabulls Securities.
Thank you. Thank you.